Okay, here we are in week 7. It seems like the weeks are just flying by, and I know that you students are really getting a lot done. This week was a pretty exhaustive week with that stage 3 of the lesson designs in as much detail as was asked for on the assignment. So I hope that that's going well, and I hope that the samples that I posted on Blackboard will help you to format your assignment in the way that is easiest for me to grade and to look over for your entire unit design. So this week we're talking about assessment, we're talking about evaluation of curricula. Um, so I want you to think about the purposes of assessment, what the results mean to you, why do you do the assessments. I hope that you are not including assessments in your unit or at other times of the year just because those are the assessments you always do, but you really want to be um, sensitive to what are they measuring and why are you giving them. I know in my district it came up last week or so that there's several choices in our language arts assessment of which ones to give, and teachers are tending to lean toward one of the assessments that yields better results because it feels better to the kids, to the teacher, and to the parents, but it's not in actuality the best assessment to be used. So I want you to be evaluating what you are using. You're going to be talking about assessment for learning, which is formative assessment, and then the assessment of learning, and that would be your summative assessment. So one of the readings that you have for this week, the first one on the list, the best value in formative assessment, talks about the differences and how you might use these two forms of assessment. It also talks about feedback. I'm hoping that you have benefited from the feedback that I've given you on your assignments. A lot of feedback about APA, and not always as much about content, but I hope that you're feeling, and I am noticing that because of that feedback, your APA uh, inserts that you're putting into your discussion boards and into your other submissions are really looking good. You're on a good track for that. So that feedback is working. So be thinking about what kind of feedback you give to your students and not just those rubber stamps, good job, that elementary teachers are so prone to do, myself included when I was in the classroom. Not on the list for reading this week, but something I do want you to look at is what your framework says. On the state website for California Department of Education, I know for language arts, the assessment chapter is chapter 8. I think it's that for mathematics as well. But go into, when you get a chance, I know you've been super busy, but I want you to know what the state of California says about assessments for your particular content areas. So take a look at that and just know that as master's students in curriculum and instruction, you need to know that that is part of our state framework in all of our content areas. So this week you are also reading chapter 9, curriculum evaluation. And along with that, you're going to also, I think this is an article, Education and the Role of the Educator in the Future. It talks about 10 subtopics in this piece, talking about customizing learning for the learner, so differentiation, learning in both virtual and physical, it being nonlinear, learning with thinking machines, that should grab your attention, focused on multimedia, it's collaborative, involving the whole mind, based on discovery, it's problem-based, and it should be holistic. So those are 10 points to look for when you access that resource. Then there's a very short, little over a minute, Milton Chin video, which talks about the teacher as the coach or facilitator. And I noticed in the unit that was submitted online that I read earlier this evening that that student in our group did a really nice job as the facilitator, where it's not all lecture and delivery. It's about being the facilitator and making materials available to the students to kind of explore their own learning and indulge in that inquiry piece that we want students to be involved with. The third piece for this week is a TED Talk by Conrad Wolfram. It's about 20 minutes, and he talks about math instruction in particular. Then you have another TED Talk from Sir Kenneth Robinson. I think you will remember him from week 1. This is about a 20-minute TED Talk, and he's talking about a revolution in education. So he's always really interesting. This piece is called Bring on the Learning Revolution. And then lastly, there is a piece called 21st Century Skills, Education, and Competitiveness. This is a booklet that was put together by the Partnership for 21st Century Skills. It's a 19-page guide. And I think page 10, what we want to do now, will be of particular interest to you. So make sure that you access these 6 resources. Read the chapter in chapter 9 about in the textbook. And after you have completed all of that, you're going to do a short multimedia staff development opportunity piece. This is going to be around 21st century learning. So you're going to put together a mini, and by this we mean mini. It's going to be short, less than 5 minutes. A mini multimedia presentation. So it could be using Prezi, Google Slides, PowerPoint, whatever you want. And it's something that could serve as a staff development opportunity. So the situation is this, that your principal has asked you to take a few minutes of staff time in a staff meeting to educate and encourage your colleagues on the importance of understanding and utilizing 21st century teaching. So, as I said, some of the choices could be Google Slides, Prezi. They suggest Powtoon. I'm not super familiar with that one. But any other kind of multimedia tool that you want to use. It doesn't even have to be a presentation tool. It could be something to engage your colleagues with. So a very short, a couple of minutes. Have fun, use some of your creativity. Maybe stretch yourself a little bit on which kind of media you want to use. And then you're going to post your presentation as a link, being sure that you have set the sharing properties to anyone with a link can view. Make sure you do that so I don't have to email you back in the middle of the week and say, I can't find this because you need to share it with me. Also, make sure you do not put anyone at Concordia with the link, because that sends it out to anybody at Concordia. So anyone with the link, and that will give all of us an opportunity to access your presentation and see what kind of presentation you're going to deliver, possibly to your staff. Okay, so the last assignment is not due until week 8, but you can start on it this week. You're going to be fine-tuning and diving in to that stage 2. Now, ideally, this would have been done prior to your learning stage 3, but most of you have had to think about what the assessment's going to look like, because that's the whole purpose of backwards design, before you actually began planning your lessons. So what I want you to do is go back into the same template that you've used and just expand into stage 2, and you're going to include some kind of assessment, a formative assessment for each one of your lessons. These would probably be marked under the other assessment side of this, because you ideally will have one final assessment piece that would be some kind of a project or a larger kind of assessment. Some of you have asked me about pencil paper tests. It says in the directions that you're fine doing a pencil paper test, but I would really prefer that you think outside the box a little bit and try and come up with some kind of assessment that is other than pencil paper, unless maybe it's a written assessment with a writing rubric. So you're going to have a couple of weeks to do this. I will expand on this more next week, and we'll take a look at the rubric for that so that you'll be able to get in all the pieces that you need. So I will go over that rubric. And then the last piece for week 8, your final assignment, is the same that you did for this week, where you're going to submit a reflection paper. And it'll be an APA format. It'll have a title page. It'll look exactly like the one-page reflection paper that you did this week. So that being said, I'm going to make every effort to get your assignments that are due tonight graded as soon as I can. They're lengthy. It takes some time to go through and look at them carefully and use the rubric. So I try and do a few, 3 or 4 a day, because as I think I said earlier in the course, when I start looking at too many, they all kind of blend together, and I don't do them justice in grading them. And I want to give you good feedback on those, so I will probably tackle them a few at a time. So I think that's about it for this week, other than the multimedia piece and looking at 6 different resources for your discussion board presentation piece. You don't have any large assignments due this week, so take a breath, begin thinking and formatting about your stage 2, and then have fun, spend some time on that discussion board. And if you have any questions, text or email me. I love hearing from you and knowing where you are in the process, and hoping that I can be helpful to you all. So with that, I will leave you. Have a great week. We're almost done with your first class. I'm sure you must be feeling a little bit of relief as you're getting close to the end of the term. So have a good week. Hang in there, and I will talk to you once more next week.